I know certain individuals, as I'm sure you both are aware of, for them, their experience of same-sex attraction also includes like an aversion, a deep aversion to the opposite sex, like, which, is what it is. That's not my experience. Like, I'm not grossed out by the idea of the female anatomy at all. And now I lost where I was going with that. But for me, the component in regards to my interaction with somebody of the opposite sex is just more of a lack. It's not an aversion, not a proactive or active, response. Not at all. I think it's quite beautiful, but just a lack of that deeper layer of real attraction, which I'm still coming to terms with and understanding, like how much of that needs to be there. What is there? Is there a level that it needs to be there, as opposed to feeling very marked difference between what feels like a lack and a high presence of attraction to somebody of the same sex. And so I just, again, projecting myself into your situation, trying to understand. So I guess, how did that play out for you and you in terms of this?
Well, I think like one thing that Ty said earlier that we discussed was that it wasn't like suddenly like a flip-flop or a shift in sexuality where it's all of a sudden, now I like women. It was, now I'm interested in Danielle.
Right.
And I want to see.
And it's a person thing, not a gender thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's very clear. That's one of the biggest lessons from this conversation.
And I have to say, most of the men, simply my experience with individuals with same-sex attraction is, I know some women who experience it, but I know far more men. And my experience with most men that I've known, who do have very strong same-sex attraction, very strong homosexual feelings, whatever, most of them have been very attracted to at least one woman in their lives. Yeah. And so I think that's also a misconception that I had before, is that that it was impossible, that you liked one or the other. Right. And that like people who were bi, that was very rare and also very strange, but it's,
Interesting.
Well, and the thing with, and I think as a general standard, like we don't expect heterosexual men to stop being attracted to women just because they're married to their spouse or they're committed to their spouse. Like, we're human. We're always going to experience attraction, sexual or otherwise, to people other than our spouse. Right. And I think that that's the same. Do I experience attractions to other people? Yeah, I do, men included. But it's not I don't ever feel like this desire, like, oh my gosh, like, I think maybe I made a mistake. It's just like, I am attracted to people. I still think people are attracted, but I love Danielle and I'm committed to our marriage. Like, I love that. And it doesn't feel compulsive, And I think anybody that's healthy, and spiritually, emotionally, otherwise, is always going to experience various kinds of attraction to different people at different times, but they're always going to know how to keep that in order, how to keep it in check. And so with Danielle and I, it's really about me, and I learned this too, even with men, because I went through a period of time where I wasn't sure that I even was going to stay in the church. And I really struggled, and I dated men for a while. And there was even in that, like when there was, someone that I dated once that I really, really grew to care about deeply. And things that there was just aspects of the relationship, things that I never thought that I would ever think or like or want or whatever, or even feel okay with, it was different when you feel differently about a person, right? And so with Danielle, the fact that it's like the sexual feelings that I have for Danielle are not because I just feel this intense sexual attraction for women. Right. It's because I love Danielle. And I love, this is, sexuality, it's kind of like, what's the organizing principle of your marriage or your relationships? Is the organizing principle of your relationship sex? Or is it spirituality? Is it friendship? What is it? And I think while sexuality for us in our marriage is an integral part, and it's an important part, it's not the organizing principle. And I think for really healthy relationships, it never is, and it can't be. And if it starts out that way, it has to shift from that to something else if the relationship is going to survive.
Right, to be sustainable, yeah.
Because it evolves. I mean, in any marriage, like it's going to change. It's going to wax and wane over time.
Mm-hmm.
And so with us, it's just a matter, like the organizing principle of our marriage is like I think our spiritual relationship, and two, like our friendship. And the fact that we have a really healthy sexual relationship is very satisfying and it's very meaningful, but it's not the foundation of our relationship.
Right.
And I think that when you have two really healthy individuals, like, you know, it kind of, and if there was issues, I think the spiritual side of things and the fact that we are very open and that we communicate very, very well would have enabled us to work through those, but we just really haven't had it. And
those
so
foundational principles and a healthy methodology for resolving any concern if it does arise.
yeah, and I have a really good friend who his wife was married before. She was a widow, and she said, and her first husband was very heterosexual, but he ended up getting cancer right after they were got married, and so their marriage was nursing him to death. But she said that her marriage, her second marriage, to my friend who does experience SSA, she said it's way better than the first. Because he was one of my models because they were very open. They talked a ton about it. I mean, they hashed everything out, and they went into everything with eyes wide open, lots of commitment, and they just have a really, really healthy marriage.
I have to say that from people that I know who are in healthy mixed orientation marriages, most of us would say that is one blessing of SSA, is that you start off the marriage learning how to communicate. And talking and being open and also feeling like this is the most vulnerable part of this person. They just shared it. I need to learn how to be vulnerable myself and like open up about things instead of holding back and closing. And I think it takes most marriages, most couples, a while to get to the place where they feel completely safe and you know, like that they can really communicate. But you have to start out that way if you want to be healthy.
Yeah. And she made the comment in their relationship that her marriage is what it is because of SSA, not in spite of it.
Right.
Because of his issues and, you know, whatever, they had to learn really early on how to communicate. Yeah. And that aspect, because they had to learn to communicate around this, they communicate better around parenting, they communicate better around finances, they communicate better around anything that shows up in their marriage. Yeah. And she said, this relationship is worlds above. And she loved her first husband, and she still does, but she says the quality of our relationship is worlds above the quality of that relationship. And so I think in a lot of ways, like in some ways for me, like I think of this issue, while some people would think of it as baggage, it definitely creates a crucible where for me and for us, I would say, and I think Danielle would say the same thing, it's really been the blessing of our marriage. Because it enables so many other positive and healthy aspects. And it could be approached in a way that's unhealthy, but it's like the problem isn't SSA. The problem is how people approach it. It's individuals' relationship to it. It's shame that they feel. It's, you know, a lot of things that they have. It is what it is, and it's value neutral. It's not good, it's not bad, it just is.
You can see it as an opportunity.
It can be an opportunity. And for us, it really, the way that we have approached it has been a huge blessing to our relationship. And I believe it will continue to be that.
So an unfair hypothetical. So what if the sexual component goes away?
I think it does for a lot of relationships eventually. So yeah, I mean, like when they're in their 60s or whatever, who knows? I don't know. Maybe it doesn't. Maybe that's just me not understanding relationships. But we actually talked about that one time where I think Ty brought up the situation, like what if we couldn't have sex because, you know, he was in an accident, that it was no longer possible. And I think that's, like what Ty was saying earlier, that's the great thing is that the marriage isn't based on sex, it's based on all these different components. And I think too, I have to say, you know, how it wouldn't be, from where Ty is, it's not like completely intuitive that he would be sexually attracted to me. But the truth of the matter is, so I thought Ty was cute when I was 19, but by the time I was 32 or 33, however old I was, my taste had really shifted so that Ty was now far too good looking for what I typically liked. And so like that attraction for me had to grow as well. And I think that's how it is for a lot of relationships. Like people talk about love at first sight, but for most people, like that part of it grows over time, you know? And so I think too, and this may be saying a lot, but I think too in being intimate and the desire for me to be intimate with Ty and to be physically intimate with Ty, to have sex, is sometimes it comes from a place of a natural drive, and sometimes it's just because you want to connect, you know, and you want to connect physically. And so that's a motivating factor too. And so I think that although eventually the chemical drive probably goes away, I don't think that unifying part of sex and that desire to be united in that way, I don't think that goes away that easily.
And I think most of, like, you know, all the literature and everything that I've read, again, just and just being in the profession, people talking about it all the time. I mean, sexuality is always I think it's not integral. You can have a healthy relationship without it, or critical, I should say. Like, there's no such thing as a healthy relationship that's doesn't have sex as a component to it. But I think I'm a believer in the idea that sexuality is an important part of marriage, and being able to express that over the lifespan. And so for us, like, I don't have any expectation that it's ever going to change. I mean, how physiologically people change, just, you know, biochemically and things like that. But I think couples who really care about each other, and that sex is an expression of love, not just a drive that I need to have filled, is those couples find meaningful ways to have sexual intimacy, even if, you know, I mean, even if
Intercourse maybe.
Intercourse is not possible for one reason or another. You know, lots of folks are on medications that make it impossible to have intercourse, but they still find meaningful ways to experience sexual intimacy, even if intercourse is impossible.
And leaning towards also the bonding component, like
Yeah,
you're saying.
yeah. And I will always, and I believe that because we make a very conscious effort to always nurture our relationship and to nurture the love that we have, that will always be an important way of nurturing. It's the outcome of that nurturing, but it's also a part of the nurturing process, I think. And that's just something that's important for us to make sure, and we make it a priority. Like, you know, and we like when I'm working 80 hours a week, you know, I'm not always thinking, like, sometimes I'm just really tired, but it still is going, and she's really tired a lot with baby and working full time and all kinds of things. So, but we still make it a priority because it's an important part, because I believe that it's an important part of relationship.